We had an incredible time in Australia for Australia's Strongest International, and we're here to give you a quick wrap-up of the men's and women's competition.
First off then, let's talk about the venue, the compound. Now, when we were driving there on the Thursday, I was like, they're competing here? I just couldn't imagine in my head how it was going to work, because we were literally in that middle bit and there wasn't that much else going on. But actually, and I've seen a mixed bag reaction online. Some people think it looked really cool, the whole Mad Max type theme. Some people are like, what the hell is this? Honestly, I loved it. I thought it was brilliant. I like the compound.
It was cool. There's pros and cons to it. I think visually it looked amazing. You know, it was just so cool. You got some of these strongest people on the planet out in the middle of nowhere, competing in this compound with this cool Mad Max looking equipment. Obviously, we're so used to the polished arena shows that they almost... they could be anywhere in the world. Whereas this was cool because it was rural, it was outback Australia, and it looked like it. It looked like the environment was kind of, used really well.
Yeah,
and I thought it was great.
And also, like, you guys wouldn't have seen this if you just watched the stream, but there was a lot of other stuff around as well. So there was the sort of fan area with tents for different sponsors, and there were food areas, and there was it was, everything had been taken care of.
The only issue, I guess, or the only kind of thing to look at in the future was it was very remote, and that probably made it, it was die-hard strongman fans.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was about an hour and a half to 2 hours north of Melbourne, wasn't it, where the competition took place. So I
think maybe in the future, trying to grow the sport out there, we need to look at kind of more accessible venues.
Yeah.
But it was cool,
really cool.
For the people that were there, they really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the people that were there, the hardcore Australian strongman fans, which we haven't had the pleasure to meet before. One, they are crazy, but no, aren't they the nicest people?
So nice.
And they were clearly so happy to have like international people come over, spend some time with them. It was very accessible, wasn't it, in terms of being able to talk to athletes?
It was brilliant. From a fan's point of view, you were just kind of there with the athletes.
Yeah.
For us, it was great. Got to chat to so many people. I apologise if I was rushing off when I had, there were certain times I had to get back on the live stream and I might have rushed off, but it was so cool to meet so many of them. Obviously, we don't get the chance to go to Australia that often.
No.
But we had a blast, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Let's talk about events then, because during the sort of, I don't know what you want to call it, familiarisation, I guess, the day before the women's competition, we were all a little bit nervous about that arm over arm pull and that no one was actually going to pull it, weren't we?
Yeah, I mean, this arm over arm tower was built pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And I think it's just kind of been out in the wilderness, kind of getting rusted up, and
to the elements.
It probably was ending up a lot harder than planned. And attaching the chains to it, that as you raise up, the chains come off the ground, so it gets heavier and heavier as you get higher.
As you get more tired as well.
Yeah, I mean, for the women, it was extremely hard. I think winning distance was about halfway, and some of the ladies really struggled to get it moving at all. For the men, they made some adjustments the following day, so it was a lot more doable, but they still had to make it lighter than originally planned. Yeah. And I think it's important when you have an event, especially with a variety of caliber of athletes, you need to get the weights right, because what we don't want in strongman is it to be so heavy that it's just boring to watch and no one can do it. You need a combination of a couple of guys finishing, a couple of guys that are kind of like mid-pack type area, and a couple of guys really struggling. If you get that, you kind of hit it on the nail. If it's kind of like sprinting through it, it's a bit boring. And when everyone is struggling, you just start thinking, ooh, okay.
Yeah, yikes.
But the women's weight was extremely heavy. The men, they got right, I think.
Yeah.
With a couple of guys finishing, a couple of guys sort of, midway, and a couple struggling. So that was good to see.
Then we had the Mad Max log, and that is a cool log. It's 170 kilos empty, isn't it?
It's a heavy log to start with.
Yeah.
170 kilos for the men, and I think the women had the lighter log.
Yeah.
Obviously not starting quite so heavy.
Starting at 90 kilos.
90
was
kilos, that's right.
Empty weight for the women's, but really thick diameter as well, so more to consider with the clean and everything else.
Yeah, the Mad Max log is very similar in dimension to the Austrian oak. The only difference is one being metal. The Austrian oak obviously is made of wood, But because the globes are bigger, or the ends are bigger, you kind of really knocks you back as you clean that weight. But we saw some very impressive log lifting, particularly on the women's side from Andrea Thompson, with some amazing reactions. I don't know if you've seen some of the reactions.
That guy.
Mohammed, that guy. I coached that guy.
I know.
It's hilarious
soul
because
leaving his body.
he posted the video of his reaction, and it's one of my clients watching another. And when you're watching Andrea Thompson, I mean, I've been there. I've trained with Andrea. It is kind of, you're just like, damn.
Damn, she's strong.
Event number 3, we had the deadlift for reps. Now, it was more...
Ukrainian deadlift.
Yeah, Ukrainian deadlift for reps. One of the kind of criticism we got with this event is the handle was a little bit narrow.
Too short.
So for some of the bigger guys, you kind of like tight into your chest was kind of like compact into your biceps.
And also, like, you don't want the bar ending before your hand because you're going to feel that in your hand, aren't you? It must be quite
it's
nasty.
Quite painful. It was a hard... I mean, it looked, again, visually really cool.
Yeah.
But just the mechanics of it are tough. But... you know, it's one of those things. As a strong man, you have to be able to adapt and make the most of it, and that's what the athletes did. It's less like a deadlift, though. It's more like kind of like a power stair, duck walk type implement. And again, we had some very good performances on this one.
But you know it's really hard when Mitch and Rauno only get halfway through it, considering the amount of jumps.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the rulings were that it was starting at 300 kilos for the men. I think it was 180 for the women, something like that.
It went up 10
and it went up in
kilos.
10 kilo jumps. So they were expected to do 10 lifts potentially, and then if you got to the 10th, it was just rep it out. no one was getting to that 10th on this. But yeah, Mitch Hooper actually winning the deadlift on the men's side, and Donna and Andrea tying on the women's.
So next up was the Quest Stone, and this was another that was making everyone a little bit nervous in the orientation familiarization because it was so slippy. You could see it was slippy to look at. There was no real sort of bits for people to get their hands under.
Yeah, sometimes like stones that you carry, they're a bit rough and you kind of get a bit of surface and grip to it. This one was just slick. It was really, really slippy. You could see everyone worried about it. The organisers decided they would allow some tacky towels.
Well, it was belt guard that they were using, so it was like a spray.
Like a glue spray, carpet spray type thing.
Yeah.
That was allowed, and that made a big difference. Made it much better event. I think if the athletes were really struggling just to lift it, it could have been
a bit of a flop.
Yeah. I think having the grip aid made a big difference, and it ended up being a cool event.
It was, and I was so impressed with that Camilla, the lighter weight woman on the women's competition, who obviously she just sort of flipped the bottom up and carried it in a completely different way, and then got a great distance on it.
Do you know what was great about that? She tried the conventional way and then made the split decision to kind of try a different way, and it just worked for her. And just being able to adapt on the fly like that takes a lot of skill, and she was unbelievable.
And then finally, both competitions finished with the Max Atlas stones. And these are lovely looking stones, aren't they? Nice little sheen to them.
The Australian athletes that get to compete with this kit are really spoilt, to be fair. I mean, and I say that with the utmost respect, but these are very nice stones. So, sometimes you go to some competitions, stones vary from competition to competition. You can do some where a 160 stone, like Glenn Ross's stones, for instance, 160 stops a lot of people.
They're big and dusty and nasty.
These are perfect stones, really nice. The surface on them makes the tacky stick really, really well. And we saw some great stone lifting from both the men and the women.
Poor Andrea lost a bit of her tooth going for, I can't remember what she was going for now. It didn't seem important at the time.
150 or something.
Yeah, it was 150. But we ended up having a great battle at the end between Donna Moore and Shayna Wiriana. And then on the men's side of things, Rauno won the Max Stone. I shouldn't sound surprised he'd tell me off.
Rauno is a good stone lifter.
He is, and this suits him so much better where he's able to take his time, get his tacky and everything perfect. He's seriously powerful. Where he loses points on Atlas stones is when it's a run and you can't make a single mistake. So it suited him well.
So Shayna Wiriana ended up winning the women's competition. She was unbelievable.
She was brilliant, yeah.
Andrea Thompson coming second. And third place, we had an under 82 kilo athlete, Megan Clark, who was unbelievable all weekend.
She competed on the Friday evening in the women's pros. She then went and competed the following day as well in the daytime, and she won that competition. Crazy. That is madness, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
and
crazy.
Same with Camilla as well.
Yeah. Do you know what? fair play to them as well. They are taking an opportunity.
Yeah.
It's not often you get these big contests in the Southern Hemisphere. I believe it's the first pro show ever in Australia on the women's side of things.
Yeah.
So that's what I want to see. And that's probably my only criticism, was that we had a lot of local athletes pulling out last minute.
It was a shame, yeah.
And
it was
when
a
you
shame.
think Mitch Hooper, Andrea Thompson, Donna Moore are all preparing for the Arnolds.
Yeah.
They weren't focused on this competition. They're all preparing for the Arnolds, which is a huge competition, and they still step in and do this competition. I think if you're an up-and-coming athlete, take the experience. You know, guys like Rauno do well because he's just so used to competing. He's got that experience. Another athlete that just competes regularly and is so good at competing, Ivers.
Yeah.
So for those of you that are kind of on the way up, just be ready to take these opportunities. If you come last, it doesn't matter. I've come last many times, but if you don't put yourself in the situation, you're never going to achieve anything. So if you are an up-and-comer and an opportunity like that arises, take it. Worst case, you use it as a training session and learn from it. But, you know, there was athletes I thought could do very well that ended up pulling out. And, you know, when promoters have put so much effort into trying to promote the shows, put on these amazing competitions, it's tough on those guys as well.
Yeah.
So athletes, make sure when you say yes to a competition, you got to just go and do it. So top three on the men's side, Mitch Hooper absolutely dominating the show. He was pretty much done. I think he just did one Atlas stone to secure victory.
Yeah, he might not have had to do that at all, but Rauno came second to him on the stone carry in the end, so he needed that 1 point.
He needed the point. Rauno Hainler ending up in second place, and then a very impressive up-and-coming athlete. I really want to keep an eye on this guy. Lots of potential. You know, you can when you watch someone, you can just see that natural talent. He's a little bit raw, needs work in terms of technique and other areas, but Fadi El Masri, very, very impressive, and being coached by Mitch Hooper.
Who is being coached by you, so this man has a wealth of knowledge coming
But watching Fadi, there's just clearly a lot of, you know, natural strength.
He's
and
got
ability.
it, hasn't he?
He has. He technically not there at all yet.
No,
but the power
genetically.
is there, and I think in a year or two's time we're going
He's
to
a
see
giant as well.
big dude,
isn't he?
big strong dude. I was impressed with some of the other athletes as well, to be quite honest. Some really good performances, and like I said about that experience, there's a couple of guys started really well, started to fade towards the end. That's competition experience. A couple of guys I think starting a little bit, and some of the ladies starting a little bit too heavy on the log when you kind of looked at what their PBs were, and the fact that we were forced to start so heavy anyway, not taking the opener and trying to open with a little bit more. We saw some athletes just missing out on picking up points that I think when you're at competition, the best mindset is to focus on competition first, then hitting PBs and records. And we had a few guys, I think they were just going, you know, for broke.
Yeah.
And ended up zeroing because they messed up. So just from competition experience, you know, if you're there as a competitor, focus on competing first. Then if you get the opportunity, go for those PBs and go for the records. But amazing competition. We had an absolute blast.
We did.
So many incredibly kind and friendly people that we got to meet. It was amazing. Hopefully we get to come back to Australia in the not too distant future. Hopefully we get to come back to Australia soon.
Okay guys, so the stream is still available to watch on ADL Live. I will include a link in the description below, or of course you can watch our videos / behind the scenes, also linked in the description below. But let us know what you thought of Australia's Strongest International.
I was just going to add as well, make sure you guys go and follow Australia's Strongest International on Instagram. They want to bring the sport up in the Southern Hemisphere, and hopefully the more people that go and follow, the more chance they have of picking up sponsors and putting on something bigger and better next year.